So, good evening, guys. Okay, so today is our third session about these integrations, the APIs and integration architecture and design, and which we started basically last week, where Dhanik has demonstrated the basic kickoff session along with the design pattern, what are the things in APIs, what is the API, so the basic details we have covered, right? And to continuation of that, this is our second or first consecutive session, I would say. And in this particular session, we would be basically we'll be focusing on the web services and the REST services and the APIs. So first we will go through what is APIs, what is that? I mean, what does that mean basically? So the API basically where that particular terminology or that particular thing actually fits in our software industry or our IT architecture. And among APIs, how Salesforce handles that APIs, right? How Salesforce handles that API, or what are the varieties, types of mechanisms of API basically involved into Salesforce. So those are the details we are going to share in this particular session. We are going to discuss in this particular session, and we will try to be having a practical session or just the demo session if time allows. So the main agenda of this particular session is mainly the APIs. What are the different types of APIs? How the APIs is involved into Salesforce? All these details. Okay, give me a second, guys. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. So coming back to our session, so this is my small brief. Okay, so myself is Shayanta or Shayanto. I am a Bengali guy. I belongs to West Bengal, and currently I'm working with IQVIA, which is predominantly known as IMS Health. And I'm currently working as a project manager, Salesforce project manager, and around I do have 15 years of experience. So before going to the main session, first the recap, what we discussed, right? What we discussed in the earlier session. We have discussed the varieties type of integration pattern, right? So the integration patterns can be basically 6 types. One is your request and reply. The second is your fire and forget. Then it comes to the batch. Then it comes to the remote call. Then it's the UI based data change and the data virtualization. If you have got a chance to go into deeper, you must have understood that what are the different types and what are the inner meaning of all of those, right? So request and response means you are requesting something, waiting for the response, getting the response, and then processing that response. Fire and forget. That means you are requesting something and then you are completely forgetting about it. You don't care what is going to happen once you request it. Coming to the batch data, you know that when it is a time to process millions of records, thousands of records, or lakhs of records, how that particular data can be processed across the system. So that time basically the batch data synchronization comes into the picture. Coming to the remote call-in, when a particular event occurred, a user comes to an application, clicks a button, a user comes to an application, select a pick list value from a drop down, a user comes to an application, then click on a link, right? So that time I want that particular thing, that particular event, right, will be notified to the third party system. That basically all concept about the remote call-in. Okay, UI based data change. So if it is an UI, the remote call-in, it can be UI, it can be business process, it can be business layer, right? It can be anything. It can be data layer as well. But when it comes to the UI update, it is all involved into your UI event. So you are seeing the application, you are working in front of your Amazon app or Amazon website, taking some particular order, adding that into the cart. Okay, so that time, if Amazon or you want to notify that particular event to some other system, you will go with the UI update based on data changes. And data virtualization, you do not want the third party data or the other systems data to be stored into Salesforce, but you want to play with those data. Okay, I have an application and I have another application, or I have an application and that application needs some data from my other applications data. Other application can be anything. Other application can be e-commerce website application. Other application can be your any software application. Input. Take an example of Flipkart. I want particular Flipkart's data, and I want to play with Flipkart data. I do not want the Flipkart data to store into my website, into my application. So that's all about your data virtualization, because I am not storing the data, but managing the data virtually, right? These are the 6 patterns basically we have discussed, and along with that, we have discussed about this particular topic, right? That what are the parameters which can affect those particular patterns. What are the main parameters? Was it is the same transaction? If I am requesting in a particular transaction, in the same transaction, I want the response, or I can be good, or I am good with if it is a different transaction as well, right? If what I am requesting to third-party system, is it a bigger size of volume of data, or it's just a smaller size of data? Am I updating something small, a particular field or 2 field or 5 fields, or I am trying to update 100 fields or 50 fields altogether? I want that 50 fields basically data should go to the external system and then comes back from the external system's validation. So this is all about your message. How much load, right? How much volume? Then the contract, right? The contract basically the one time thing, the one time 2 systems will be connected. Once the 2 systems will be connected, with that particular connection, I would be getting some details. It can be some session ID, it can be some encrypted format of data. With that particular session ID or encrypted format of data, I will work all of my rest, all of my existing, all of my pending or the rest of the flow. Okay, so that means that I do not have to call the external system again and again. Only one time I will be calling, I will be getting a session ID or an encrypted format of particular details that basically establish the contract between 2 systems. And once the contract has been done, then what will happen? I do not need to connect that particular system again and again with the user ID, password, URL, all of the stuff. All I can care about the session ID, because that is my contract. Synchronous and asynchronous, you must be familiar with this particular terminology. This is the base of your integration. So when it is synchronous, that means it's a two-way, right? It is two-way. Whenever a request and reply, somebody says, hey, I want a request, I am going to request, and at the same time, I am waiting for a reply. That means it's completely synchronous. And asynchronous, whenever it's fire and forget, you can say that, boss, this is a asynchronous request. Somebody asks you, you know that what is the basically type of this particular integration? Is it synchronous or is it asynchronous? Then you can ask that how that particular integration behaves. Is it a request reply, or is it a fire forget? So if fire forget, definitely it's an asynchronous, and request reply, synchronous. Guaranteed delivery. The guaranteed delivery basically tells you that whether the delivery has been done, the delivery has been proper, or the delivery was not proper, right? So basically how you get in today's world. Suppose when you do a courier, right? You get a tracking number. With that tracking number, you can track that whether your parcel, your message has been delivered at the at the specific address or not. So that basically makes you feel that yes, your delivery is guaranteed by the courier company, right? With that tracking number. Then declarative preferred, whatever we have discussed, that it can be configured, all these integration patterns, whatever we have, it can be configured with the usage of all the declarative approach. What Salesforce gives us a process builder, it gives flows, it gives us workflow rules, it gives us approval process, it gives us outbound messages. So these are the declarative approach where you can establish the integration. Whereas sometimes if it is a complex integration, if it is a difficult integration, you must have to write some batch class, right? So those are basically the programmatic approach. Always remember one thing, guys, that the declarative approach always preferred by any companies and any project and any client, because the declarative approach, you do not need any maintenance. Today, if you write a particular Apex program, tomorrow some requirement changes comes, definitely you have to go to the Apex class and you have to change the Apex class. Then after changing, you have to test that Apex class. After changing, you have to deploy that. While deploying, you have to remember that I'm going to deploy in production. So does my client knows about that? If they doesn't know, then we have to intimate them. All the hangamas are there, right? But if it is a declarative, right? So yeah, you need some approval, you need an authorization from client, but you do not need all the hazards things, right? All that particular, very much extensive testing is not required. The extensive deployment window is not required. So the declarative approach is pretty much easy. It is easy, and it is client can easily access that, and you are not changing any Apex class. That means you do not need to write down or change your test class. So these things basically you can escape with, right? So that is the declarative approach, always preferable. So that was our previous sessions, which was the recap. Now coming back to the API sections, the API and the basics of API. So as of now, I understand that you people are very much familiar with the application programming interface, which is API, right? Now, when the API I am talking about, there are varieties type of API, right? There are varieties type of applications, right? There are varieties type of security mechanism, right? So before we go the deep dive into that particular scenarios, the first thing, okay, if I will give you a scenario, right? Suppose I want to show a Google map on my Salesforce page, okay? So the requirement is pretty straightforward. There is a page, there is a Salesforce page, and on that page, I want to show my Google map, okay? So today, Google Map has an icon, and that same icon, it has to display on my Salesforce page. How can I do that, right? So that particular integration mechanism is called Mashups. Okay, so the Mashups is basically, it integrates two applications in a single page, or showing data from another application into the other application. That means the Google Map is my target application. From that target application, I would like to show the map details into my Salesforce. That means it is my source application. So that particular scenario, that particular use case, I can achieve through various mechanisms. I can achieve through a link, right? Let's assume that I have a hyperlink, right? I have a blue color hyperlink, and that blue color hyperlink, if I will click, that will immediately open the Google Map. If that happens, that means that it is an asynchronous. Why it is an asynchronous? Because I am clicking the link and I'm forgetting. I do not care, right? That what it is happening and what it is happening after opening the Google Map. I am all sending my request to the map that, hey, Google Map, you please open the map application or map apps. And that's it. Simple. And after that, if you like to open or if you like to call any other URL like Google Map, it can be your it can be your anything, right? Any of your application, if you like to call inside from your Salesforce page, you can always use through the link. Okay, so that basically your asynchronous. Now, how you can implement that? You can definitely implement that through a formula field, through a standard or custom buttons or the custom links. Let me go and show, suppose how we can do that, right? So if I will say you that, boss, if I want to show a particular button or a particular link, and through that link, I would like to open the Google Map, what I'll do? I will simply write down a formula field, something like that, right? Let me open my notepad. So if I create a formula field and in the formula field, the data type, what I will select as formula. Then the next, what I will do, I will write in the formula field, there is a syntax for hyperlink. Okay. So if I'll give hyperlink and under hyperlink, what I'll give? I'll give the Google API name. So the Google API can be api.google.com, right? And after that, might be that particular, I cannot open the whole Google Map, right? I might be demanding or I want a specific city or specific address. Okay, so let's assume that I do have a particular context. Let me go to my Salesforce application and suppose if I want over here, I'll go to contacts and in this contacts, or let's go to account itself. Okay, so if you go to the accounts and just click on any particular account, right? So in this particular account, if you see there can be, so what I will do, I will suppose I just want to create this particular billing address, right? Now what I want, I will click this particular billing address and this particular billing address I want to show here as a Google Map icon. And what I want, if I click that particular Google Map icon, that Google Map icon would be showing the corresponding details of the particular address. So that is the thing basically. If I want to configure, then what I will do, I will go as I was telling and simply I'll create a hyperlink. So in that particular hyperlink, that which particular city you want to open, which particular state you want to open, which particular country you want to open, the details. Okay, and once you give all the details, then there should be an image, right? So if you want an image, then just configure that particular image under your documents folder. Okay, and then you just create your formula field and that particular formula field you expose over here. That's it, you are done. So that is your mashups. That is your mashups through links. The links basically, it would be an asynchronous call to the external system. Now the second thing, sometimes what I want that when I would be, I do not want to click or something. I do not want to click. I do not want to click any button. I do not want to click any hyperlink, nothing I want. I want that whenever this account page will be loading, I want that particular account address or the account accounts, what I would say, the accounts address from the Google Map will automatically come into this particular application down, right? Here, let's assume that I want that my all account address details would be coming from the Google Map without doing any click, without doing any button press. How I can do that? That can also happen through this Mashup, but this time through iframe. Okay, so if you configure one iframe in this particular VA page and in this particular page through a lightning component or through a VA page, then what will happen once this page will be loading all the details from the Google Map would be coming and showing over here. Okay, so that is basically we are doing the same thing but with a different procedure. This procedure is called your Mashup with iframe. Now, the main advantage or the main difference between the iframe and Mashup is the iframe is a synchronous thing. So that means I am loading every details while loading this particular page just below. Okay, so if that is the thing, then the first thing, this particular request should go to Google Map. The second thing, that request should be approved and I should get a proper response. And the third thing, once I get a proper response, I would be loading the details inside my VF page, right? So this is a request and a response combination. So once that request and response combination actually happens, that is basically happens through iframe. But if you are doing it through a link, that means it is an asynchronous. Going back to the main topics. So this is all about your data mashups. I hope that it is clear to you guys. Okay, now coming to the main details of the various APIs. See, in today's world, whether it is Salesforce is using or Salesforce doesn't use, right? In our today's world, most of the integration are based on your web services and the REST services. Okay, you take you forget about Salesforce. You take any other example. It is completely majority of the integration how you are withdrawing some money from your ATM, right? You are swiping your ATM debit card, credit card on a particular machine at restaurants, right? So everything, majority of this particular transaction happens through your web services and the REST services. Apart from, so this web services API and the REST services API, guys, these are the two very much involved into our regular life. I'm going into a metro station and into the metro station, I am swiping my metro card. I have a metro monthly card. I am tapping that metro monthly card. The gate is automatically opening. When the gate is automatically opening, the money is automatically getting deducted from my account or from my card, from my balance, right? I am opening an Amazon application, and in that Amazon application, what happens? I have an Amazon Pay balance. When I am ordering something through Amazon Pay balance, my Amazon Pay balance is automatically deducting, right? So these are the integration which we have seen many times, and most of them are based on your REST or web services API. Coming back to Salesforce, Salesforce is giving some other APIs also. So these are bulk API, the chatter API, and the custom web services. If you are considering the bulk API, I'll be coming the web services and REST API more details in my next half an hour session. But if I'll more focus about the bulk API, I already discussed, right, that whenever it is about hundreds of records, thousands of records, millions of records, right, so that cannot be handled through your web services, that cannot be handled through your REST services, because that needs to process a very large volume of data. So that time your bulk API comes into the picture. Okay, but bulk API is not a generic term basically. Okay, so bulk API might not be, bulk API doesn't used by the other softwares like Salesforce, or so they have some different procedure. Whenever if you consider Microsoft Dynamics or MS Dynamics or your Siebel, right, or your Oracle Cloud, so they might be handling this particular bulk processing or the large volume of data with some different mechanism. But how Salesforce actually process it is with the bulk API. But whether it is a Siebel, whether it is a Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, or whether it is a Oracle Cloud, right? Everybody uses this web services API and REST API. And that was the reason I initially told that these are the two APIs which we are extensively using in our regular life. Then coming to Chatter REST API. Chatter REST API is nothing. It is basically your all Chatter object related integration. Today you go to Chatter in Salesforce, you open the Chatter, you type something, and that chatter can be posted on Facebook. That particular message can be posted on Twitter. Okay, so those basically happens through this chatter REST API. Coming to custom web services, the web services which is customized in generic, in simple terminology. That's it. Just all is involved here, the custom logic. We'll see the details later. Now, coming back to when we are talking about the APIs, the first thing which should strike in your mind, that is security, right? Because here what happens, varieties type of applications are involved, varieties types of APIs are involved. When I was talking about the Google API, right? The Google Map. So your first question should be that, hey Shanto, how the security actually is maintained? So are not we breaching the Google app security? How Google will authenticate that this particular request from Salesforce application is a proper one? How can they validate that? So whenever any API, whenever any integration you would be developing, you would be designing, you would be configuring, always remember the first question which you have to give the details, the first answer which you have to give the details to the management, to your fellow colleagues, to your client, everybody, that how the security is holding, how you will be managing the security. Okay. So the security basically is maintained by various type of mechanisms. One is your authentication. Authentication nowadays, I believe that everybody is familiar, right? With username, password, right? Then your network security, right? So how the network basically will maintain the security. Then comes to the data, right? That how the data is secured. You cannot take the data which is used by your client, right? If you ask, hey, Amazon, can you give me all your customers' data? Amazon won't give you, because they have that particular data security mechanism, and there is a particular law, right? That you cannot expose the data in front of everybody. Your Facebook data, you definitely always concerned about that how much that is secured, right? How much that particular my videos, my photos are secured with Facebook, so that anybody outside of my friend list, okay, I won't allow to see that particular video or photos. That comes into the data security picture. And then the integration securities, and the integration security, yes, we will be discussing later. So first go through first thing, that the user authentication and the session security. See, now the main agenda of our program is considering Salesforce. We are discussing all these APIs and all this integration, right? So when I will consider the Salesforce is a system where it is involved with this integration, then I will believe that how the authentication or the network security or the data security is maintained inside Salesforce. Okay, I won't care about the other system, because I all concerned about the Salesforce security. The first thing is that the username and password. Password never expires. User can be API only. Limits the number of attempts. Session settings can be defined under session settings in setup. Where can you find all those? So if you go today, right, in your Salesforce application, just navigate to your setup. And if you just go to your setup, you can find all the details inside here to declare all these things. The first thing is that the session, right? So if you just try to validate that how is your session settings, you can obviously do that. Go to session settings, okay? You can see over here that what is the session configuration. Suppose an external system, suppose some banking system, suppose some restaurant system is trying to hit my application. So all the time they can hit my application? All the time my Salesforce application will be responded to them? No, that cannot happen, right? because there can be a certain parameter, there can be a timeout value, which you can set it over here. You can set it as 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 24 hours as per your requirement, right? So these are the things basically you have to take care while you configuring the security. That is one. Okay. Now the second thing is that if you go through each and every parameter over here, you will be finding everything is basically a secured concern over here. Now the add domain in today, you can see that this particular domain is not your login.salesforce.com, right? We have to maintain a separate domain when we are working for a lightning, we are working for the LWC. Why do you need a domain? Anytime basically you think about that, because of the security, because somebody wants to know that what particular application we are hitting. We do not want to go with a generic name which is login.salesforce.com, right? So that's all about the security session or the session settings you can configure over here. Now the second thing is that the user details, and which I was talking about over here, right? The password and users, all this, where you can find all those. These things you can find under profile. Okay, so if you go to a particular profile inside a Salesforce, you go over here, and if you go over here, give me a second, guys. So in this particular profile, if you just try to open a particular any profile, let's just open a system admin or anything, right? So what will happen under this particular profile? Let's assume that let me go to the next page if it allows me. Yeah, I can. Okay. So here I'm going to the system administrator. And if I go to system administrator, I can share all these particular security. Right? So here basically, if you see there are the login hours, right? So in this login hours, you can define that what particular time basically the other system can hit, or the what particular time the application is accessible. This is also nothing but a security mechanism. Okay, now apart from the login hours, you go to the password policies, right? Suppose you want that particular user which you are giving for an integration, that particular password would be expires in 90 days. What will happen after 90 days when a banking application or a restaurant application will try to hit your application? Definitely that will not be able to establish the connection, because your password got expired after 90 days, right? So that's the reason you have to configure in this mechanism. Either you have to configure that password never expires, or you have to configure that, or you have to intimate the other system that, boss, my password is going to expire by 3 days. So you have to take the, necessary action for that, right? So now coming to other security mechanisms, you come over here and you see the login IP ranges, right? So the login IP ranges, if you see, what will happen over here, the add the IP ranges. You do not want that some IP